Hi, I'm Renee Hobbs, and welcome to tonight's class. This is EDC 534. It's the spring 2018 semester. It's where I am, it's already February 1st because I'm still in Bonn, Germany. But I am here with the amazing Denise, Cornelia, Adam. I see Pat, Angie, Mary, Barbara, and Asher. I see all of you here tonight. I'm really glad you were able to join us, and there's probably some more people going to be popping in. And then there's some people who are going to be watching this via the recording. So let me share my screen with you, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing tonight, right? So here we are at the home page. That's digitalauthorship.org. And we're in week 2, which is really called digital authorship, right? So I'll click on that and it'll take us to the home page. Here's the agenda for tonight's session. Our theme is, what is digital authorship? What are the conditions under which creative expression flourishes, right? So the first part of the session tonight, I want to review the completed work because we're still in the beginning of the semester and we're trying to get a handle on all these new ways of being in a learning community together. That's really what this is about, right? So why don't we start with what your experience was like in our closed Facebook group. What were the highlights and lowlights of participating in our closed Facebook conversation this week, where I asked you to introduce yourself in relation to your identity as a digital author, tell me about any kind of projects you thought you might be interested in working on, and maybe self-reflecting on some of your strengths and some of your areas of growth and opportunity. What did you like and what did you dislike about using the Facebook tool for our dialogue? Who wants to go first?
Well, I found it was really easy to post because of being familiar with Facebook, and I thought it was an interesting way to read about others thinking about the same topics.
Thanks for sharing. Other perspectives on what your experience was like using this Facebook tool, how you saw the pros and the cons?
I don't really do Facebook much. I kind of look at it to see what my kids are doing. So that format's a little, let's say, less familiar than it might be if I were 30 years younger.
Mm-hmm.
When I first posted it, I didn't see it collapse, and so I thought I did it wrong, and I had to talk to somebody who was 30 years younger, and she said, no, it's fine, it'll be fine.
Yeah, so the issue of how it displays, thank you for saying that, Barbara, because that was confusing to me too.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't always display.
It work now that I know how to do it.
Cool. Denise, what'd you love and hate about the Facebook thing?
Well, I never had a Facebook account before this, so I'm younger than you, Barbara. So it was a lot to just like set it up and be able to like get friends and stuff like that. And people at work were like, "You joined Facebook?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's true, I did." And they were surprised because I don't like Facebook. There's just so much stuff, negativity and stuff like that I'm like, I just don't want to be a part of it. But now that I have to be, I can see the benefits of it.
Okay. Wow. I feel humbled and honored by realizing that you were a Facebook virgin. And now you're having your first experience. So yeah. I think you'll have some very important insights to share with us by the end of the semester. So I'd love to hear from everyone who has had a chance to reflect on, what do you think the pros and cons of this tool are going to be now that we're starting to use it? What did you like about using it this week, and what are you anticipating might be weird or wonky?
I can chime in here. I like that it's a closed group. Since I'm a newbie to the program, a newbie to a lot of these digital tools, I've had a little bit of experience on Facebook, but it's still, I'm like holding on to the edge as I move forward. So that part was good, but it seems that I think it's the same thing I brought up last week. It's a little disconcerting the way you're agreeing to all kinds of things that, like some of the things today, I knew it was okay to agree to. This was on video, but I still didn't really understand what I was agreeing to. So that's still a little unnerving.
Yeah.
And Facebook is part of that same culture that says, you know, read these 11 pages and agree, and then we can proceed.
Yeah, Cornelia, thanks for sharing that. It's really the case that every keystroke and every action you do is part of how the system gathers data in order to function. And so you are agreeing to give away data that you produce by pointing and clicking and typing. And and companies aren't necessarily transparent about how they use that data. That being said, between Facebook and Video Ant's run by scholars at the University of Minnesota. They have no profit motive. They are in it for trying to improve research and teaching. I feel like their motives might be a little simpler and less complex than Facebook. But it's good that you're being a critical reader all the way around, and that voice and perspective is going to be really important. I'm here in Germany this weekend in Bonn, and I was invited to come here by the German broadcaster Deutsche Welle. People in Germany are far more concerned about privacy than we are here in the United States, and there's good historical reasons for that. And we've been having some fascinating conversations. One of the sessions I went to after I gave my talk was a guy who completely blew my mind with his insights on privacy and algorithm literacy, and he showed me a whole lot of cool tools, and I'm gonna maybe get to show you some of them as well. But it really is the situation where we don't generally have much knowledge of how our data is being used. So I think being cautious on that topic is well advised and appropriate. And other experiences that you had with our Facebook. One of the things that I observed, just going back to the sharing my screen, is that I definitely aware that different aspects of my Facebook identity are, I'm not sure, more or less transparent to you. So I don't know what part of my Facebook identity you have access to or don't. But one of the things I do appreciate is that our closed group is a place where we can ask each other questions and be vulnerable to each other and be authentic, because it's just the 18 of us who are enrolled in the class who are doing this. And I really like how I think we've made an effort to sort of talk to each other. And so I think that's going to be fun. I hope we can continue to explore it. And you can see that I've already put up the place for our next conversation. So we're keeping our conversations in threads, although anytime you want to open up a new topic, go right ahead, right? I've posted up here to the top our week 3 discussion, and I'll be sharing that with you in just a couple of minutes. The other thing that I thought was really worth reflecting on was the great job you did in commenting on this terrific little video, How to Be Creative. I could see from the quality of your comments that you had a number of interesting ahas. And of course, as I watched it again, while I was reading your comments, I had new ahas. So I added some of my thoughts as I watched the video with your comments attached. So for me, part of the fun,
there's a different sense of pride of like, I can't believe I was part of something.
For me, part of the fun of it is actually seeing how you pull out ideas from this video to make sense of. And so I made some notes about some of the ideas that came up in in that it was like an asynchronous conversation, right? We were talking, but we weren't all watching the video at the same time. A lot of you had special comments to make about the whole neuroscience of creativity and the way in which the researcher sets up creativity as really the process of making associations or connections between ideas. And then quite a number of you talked about Kirby Ferguson's idea about copying, transforming, and combining. And of course, that's a big theme for our class. So it was really great to be able to preview that tonight. But in some ways, this video has kind of some mind-blowing aspects to creativity, especially if we were told once in our life or several times in our life that, you know, some people are creative and some people aren't. And that message has struck many of us. So this video completely tries to undermine that idea. Mm-hmm. It posits that we all are creative, right? And that's liberating and terrifying at the same time, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
oops, Renee, I had a quick question. I entered my information today about 4 o'clock, and that's the reason I'm not seeing it, because I missed when you scooped it up and put it in the presentation for tonight.
No problem, my friend, since I'll be going back and looking after this class to make sure that this is how I'm keeping track of class participation. So I'll make sure I find your comment. Not to worry, don't worry. And what's kind of interesting is if you come in to an asynchronous conversation early and you're the first one to present, you kind of don't get the benefit of seeing what others present. If you come in late, like everything's already been said. So you'll get a chance to experiment this semester about, like, if you come in early, you might want to come back and revisit the conversation a few days later. And if you come in late, then you might realize, okay, well, actually, I might want to come in early. So you'll get a chance to experiment with all those different positions. Asynchronous dialogues are unique, you know, and there's an art to them, and I guess we'll get to experiment with that. So, so then let me go back to share my screen here. So then the last thing I want to talk about is that you had some experience this week building your blog and tweeting, right? So what happened is when I got your Twitter message, I went over here to the class roster. You see it up here at the top menu, and I linked your blog to your name. So there's that's Barbara's. Here's David Antico's, and where did it go? I don't know. What happened there, Dave? Where's that site go to? So how cool that your blog posts are here, all linked together. Pat, there it is, and isn't it beautiful? So Rhode Island. Screaming Rhode Island. So beautiful, so beautiful. So one thing that's going to be really fun is we're going to get a chance to read each other's work and talk to each other. Now, if your name is not linked here, either you didn't send me a tweet with a usable URL, or you sent it to me and I just haven't found it yet, right?
My name isn't even there. Should I be worried about that? I did tweet and I did send a link, but my name's not on the roster.
Okay. Now, Mary, did you register for the class? Are you? Okay, cool. So then let me go double check and I'll get your name in there right after this class. Anybody else not see their name on that roster? Okay, cool.
Renee, I don't have a problem with not seeing my name, but I know I tweeted, but I'm new at tweeting too, so I don't know. Could you just let me know if you can find my tweet or not? Because I know I did it earlier on in the week.
Absolutely. So how would I find your tweet? Well,
I have no clue. I'm new at that too.
Cool. So what I do is I go up here to the, I guess this is like a search bar, and I type in EDC 534, and then comes all of them. There's Barbara's, Meg's, Matt, and see how the link to the blog shows up right there. I did notice that some of you, oh, there's a cool GIF, right? Thank you, Tim. Adorable, right? So some of you, I might not have been able to make the link. If the link didn't work, I couldn't make the link. So one thing that you could do is you could resend your tweet, making sure that you're using that hashtag properly. The other thing that I'm doing, just so you know, is of course I'm following you, right? And so you should see me in your follower list, but I'm doing more than following. I've created a list. Lists are really powerful. So I've subscribed, only 6 of you so far, but pretty soon I'll have you all subscribed to a list that lets me access all of your tweets, right? And that's really cool, right? So that's another aspect of Twitter that's really cool, is that you can subscribe to this public list of digital authorship folks in the spring of 2018, right? And I'll keep adding this list as we go along. But one of the things that I think is really important for you to start doing this week with Twitter is getting followers, right? So what you really want to do is get at least 100 followers on your follow list. So it's going to be pretty easy to follow the students in our class, right? It's going to be pretty easy for you to follow them. You're just going to use that EDC 534 hashtag, and everybody's name who comes up is going to be a member of our class. Follow them all. But then that's only 18 of us. How do you get up to 100? So then you type in things like digital literacy, right? And you start to see what comes up. You start to read, and you start to say, maybe I'll follow the DML Research Hub. Who's that, right? Okay, so you look at them, you look at their tweets, you see if they look interesting, right? And you begin to explore, who are these people who are contributing? And what does their Twitter stream look like? And if it looks interesting, then subscribe to them. So Twitter's like a river of cool people that you wish you knew. And the trick is to find them. So keyword search is really great. Keywords like digital literacy, media literacy, digital pedagogy. Oh, there's a really cool group of people tweeting with those keywords. Experiment. Teacher librarians. You'll find all kinds of really interesting people. For Twitter to be interesting to you and for you to be able to use it as a research tool for learning, you need about 100 people in your network, right? And you'll find them, and they'll be sharing all kinds of cool things with you. So I hope you enjoy Twitter and get to experiment with them more, but I'm hoping that by next week when I look at your Twitter identity, that you'll have 100 people in your tweet stream. Okay, let's see if anybody has any questions or comments about that. Okay, so you're cool with that? Nope. Yeah.
I have a question about the list.
Yeah.
How do we follow the list again?
Yeah, so you'll find the list. I'm going to share my screen with you.
Okay.
So you'll find the list. If you go to my homepage, there it is right there. Let's open it up right there. My homepage. And then when you go to my homepage, you can see my tweet, who's following me, who I'm following, my likes, and then there's my lists. See,
I must have to be on a computer because on the iPad I don't see your list.
Oh, it could be that's true, Pat. And there might be another way to see it too. Like maybe there's a little dots in the.
Yeah, I was looking. Okay.
Yeah, so you'll have.
If I figure it out, I'll put it in the post for because that's where I tend to do Twitter is on a tablet or a phone.
Sure, and I think maybe you can access it on a phone, but it's going to be in a different. It's going to look a little different.
I found it on the iPad. There's a gear.
Aha!
On your page, and then that's where the lists are.
Cool. So I organize, since I have lots of followers, look how I organize them. Ed tech folks I like. Change agents I like. School leaders I like. Libraries I like. Teachers I like. Profs I like. Reporters I like. Right? So you can troll through my lists and see if there's anybody that I'm following, people that are influencing my thinking. They might influence your thinking as well, right? But lists are really powerful. So if you find someone whose work you admire, see who they're following, right? And take a look at their list, right? That's a cool way to try it. So thanks for asking that good question, Pat, because not only did you solve the where is it found, but it also helped us think about the potential of those lists, right? To keep track of of who we're learning. When we're learning, everybody's learning from everyone. That can be a little bit overwhelming, huh? So we can keep that a bit organized. Okay, so we've done a little bit of reflection on the completed work, and I'm really happy with the fact that everybody's completed a blog post entry. Everybody's tweeted. You guys are all over this. So I thought, let's try a small group discussion. Give me a thumbs up if you've ever done a small group discussion on Zoom before. Oh, maybe some have, but some haven't. Okay, here's how this is going to work. We're going to watch this 3-minute video by Nathan Zed called You're Not Good Enough. Now, in the past, what I've found is that the best way to watch that video is for you to watch that like on your own screen. We don't have a streaming problem. The sound quality is better. We're going to watch that video for about 3.5 minutes. Then we're going to come back here into the Zoom and we're going to break up into groups of 4 people. We're going to try to reflect on what that video has to say that is meaningful to us in relation to our exploration of digital literacy, digital authorship, creativity, and self-expression. Okay? Let me tell you a little bit about Nathan Zed, and then we'll watch his video. Nathan Zed is a YouTuber. He is an undergraduate student at Virginia Tech, so he's 20 years old. He has 500,000 followers on YouTube. I had a chance to meet him this fall when I got to give a speech at Virginia Tech, and he is quite a talented young person. But in this video, he shares some reflections on his own identity that may relate to the courage and risk-taking and tenacity that is required to be a digital author. Okay? So now we're going to watch that video. You can, let me just do this. Let me do a thumbs up. Thumbs up if you know what we're doing next. We're watching the video on our own. Then we're coming back to the Zoom and I'll break you up into groups. Looks like everybody's ready for that. So the best thing to do now is to mute your microphone. Mute your microphone while you watch the video. And then when you're done watching the video, unmute your microphone and come back to the Zoom, okay?
Renee, quick question. I was transitioning from my phone to my computer. Where can I find the link to the video?
Oh, hey Matthew, if you're just joining me, then let me share my screen with you. You're going to digital authorship.
Mhm.
You're looking in our week 2 stream. That's the video that looks like this.
Yep.
Digital authorship, and we're watching this video right here called "You're Not Good Enough."
Okay. Yeah, that part kind of got chopped up. I was listening in my phone in the car, and then I ran inside to get in the computer.
No problem. I'm glad you're here. Take a look at it, and then we'll have our conversation. All right.
Okay.
Hey, John. Ooh. Hey, John. So the other day I was just walking down. This intro is trash. This guy's always in here, just telling me I'm not good enough. You look like Drake's ugly cousin, Derek. Can't argue with that. I'm not good at a lot of things. Most things, some would say. Here's a list of all the things I'm good at versus all the things I'm bad at. I'm not good at sports. I don't know how to make pottery. I can't juggle. I'd make a terrible doctor. Just give it to me straight, Doc. How is she? Well, if we're being honest, I don't think she's gonna make it. No. If we're being really honest, your shoes are whack and you smell really bad. What? Like I could.
Can you see video?
Hope you enjoyed that. For more food-based inspirational metaphors, follow me on my YouTube or my...
Okay, give me a thumbs up if you're back. Okay, most of you are back, or you're just finishing watching. Okay, so we're going to break up into some breakout rooms. We're trying to make connections between this crazy video and what we've been thinking about and writing and thinking about in relation to digital authorship, and maybe in terms of our own lives as well. Okay, so here we go. We're going to break into 4 breakout groups. I'm just going to let us talk for about 5 minutes. So why don't we share our feelings and our thoughts and some of the connections we can make with this video. All right, take it away. You should be getting an invitation now to join a breakout room. Join the breakout room and introduce yourselves to your new friends. Talk about that crazy video.
Hello, hi.
So, yeah, so I guess it's all about making your own burrito. That is.
With the succulent chicken.
Yeah.
And the guac.
And the guac.
Well, my immediate takeaway at the end of the video is when he said, just do things you love and not care. Just do it. Because I'm, like so many other people, can relate to everything he was talking about. So great to hear somebody being so upfront about the message, the reality, and how to respond to it.
Yeah, with after that creativity video, I was talking about it with my wife about it. We're talking about how just like kind of the nature of creativity and how I think this video kind of spoke to that, where I think it's really, people put creativity on a pedestal that you're working towards like something artistic, like it's been pigeonholed to be like this art thing, but really I think creativity is just, like you said, you're taking what you want to do with your time and actively doing that thing with your time that you want to do, or finding an outlet for that thing. So if it's like, you know, I don't know, writing, finding a way that you can channel that writing, and then digital authorship, I think, is taking that a step further. How can you take it out of writing in your notebook to writing and finding an audience or a community to share your writing? You know, being one example.
Oh, exactly.
One of the things that I think of, it is vulnerable for all of us, but I do think I agree with you that being creative is really part of the human condition. And I think that that's important. And because I'm a teacher, I want to make sure I'm modeling that and giving opportunities for that for my students. For me, one of the harder parts about a class like this is I feel like it ties to my professional image, and I'm nervous about having my professional image be less than as professional as I want it to be.
So like, what do you mean, like your image as a teacher? Because I'm a teacher as well.
Yep. Well, I guess what I'm thinking, if I'm publishing,
like, are you? Go on.
Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I just want, no, you continue. I want to see what, like, you mean like you want to, you're approaching this class as you, the teacher, or you're approaching it as you, the private individual?
Yes, I'm not the private individual. I feel like I'm approaching this as a professional and a teacher in a community, in a district that I know eyes will be on what I put out publicly, and they're expecting high bar things. And for me, as I like that person I know, as I first experiment with this, there'll be rough patches, and it's just humbling to expose those rough patches. I think if it was for me personally, I would feel more comfortable with that. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's how I feel.
Can I chime in?
Yeah.
My thought is the way I see what you just said is that you're very courageously, despite the vulnerability and everything you just said, you're serving as a model to your students to say, you know, this was challenging for me, but still moving ahead with it and working out a balance and confronting, like for my words, I'm confronting a lot of my vulnerabilities by doing this. So I just see you as being a great leader to your students and encouraging them to do it and being the first one on like the leading edge of this, of using the digital tools. So that
helps.
It's kind of exciting.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because Jamie and Cornelia, the thing I found myself thinking about when I watched this video is, you know how, so he's got this alter ego, right? The other him, right? And I started thinking about like, who was the alter ego, like for me? Like, who is that person, right? And it is partly me, but it's also my imagination about my colleagues, like Jamie, like what you were saying. It's also my imagination about what I think they might think, right? It's like a projection of them, right? Who might evaluate or judge or see my work as not adequate. And so it's not just me doing it to me, right? It's my projection of how I think my peers might react.
Like he said in the video about the drawing that he was doing, and the person who turned around to look probably just said, "Oh, you just drew a picture." Instead, he had like 8 paragraphs of scathing criticism. So yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, that was a nice moment. All the kid said was, "Oh, it's great," but in his mind, it was something else. Yeah. I think it is interesting to interrogate where those voices come from and what, you know, in what ways we constructed them from real experience, right? They didn't come out of nowhere. They came out of experiences we'd had, right?
Sure.
So, yeah. Let's see. Other connections that you can make to this video?
Could I ask you to read? Oh, I'm sorry, Adam. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just real quick, Renee, you had listed when we're looking at the video to consider digital authorship, digital literacy, and you said 2 other items.
I was thinking about connecting back to that concepts of creative expression from the video. We started with that, which is kind of cool, right? And that's when, you know, Adam said we put creativity on a pedestal, but it's really just life. It's just rolling a burrito, right?
Yeah.
Right?
It's trying something.
Right. Putting things together.
Yeah, it's putting ends together. I think creativity is always a means to a desired end. And so that kind of brought me to a question I had. So when we're talking about digital authorship, right, you're referring to the publication or the sharing in some way of created media. Is that what we're referring to?
That's cool.
When we say digital authorship, I mean it's not limited maybe to writing, but it is limited to communicate, like the general, I guess, communication term, right? Your authorship. You're producing something that's meant to be engaged with in some way by other people, correct?
Right. You know, this is such a great question. Was Emily Dickinson a poet when she was up in her garret in Amherst scribbling her poems on little pieces of paper and no one ever saw them? Of course she was. But was she an author? So an author implies an audience, right?
Right.
Right? Author, audience. Yeah. She was a poet, but she didn't have an audience. And so I think that you're onto something, Adam, about how authorship implies having receivers, you know, having people see the work.
Well,
right?
I bring that up because I feel like that's connecting a little bit. I want to kind of connect these dots here between what the discussion on creativity and what kind of Jamie brought up. So Jamie, you're talking about now you feel eyes on you from your district, right? You feel like if you have this online presence, then your work is going to be, what you create will be scrutinized, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess kind of what we might be grappling with to some extent would be not just that fear of creating this burrito, but whether you're I guess, under what persona are you creating a burrito, and should you be separating your work from yourself? Because I tend to think that the things I do outside of work, I don't tend to I guess feel that fear of my principal, my co-workers seeing what I do. The ones that I am Facebook friends with are the ones that do see things that I create. Like, for instance, so I play in a punk rock band, and one of my coworkers, we played in Woonsocket a couple weeks ago, and I never tell my coworkers I play in this band. It's kind of a hard rock kind of thing, just for me and my friends. And at this place we were playing, one of my coworkers walked in, and for about 5 minutes watched us and then left. And so since I've been kind of joking about, she's my biggest fan at school because she's the only one that's seen the band. But I guess that's kind of touching on this sense of creating who you want to see it, or even maybe the better question is who do you feel, who do you want to know that side of you?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, or feel would like that side of you. I don't think, necessarily everyone likes that kind of thing. So who do I share it with? I guess I'm asking a lot of open-ended questions, but.
What I love about that, Adam, is that invites us to think more about this idea of identity being like personal, social, and professional. And like, how do you navigate those identity positions? So let's talk about that when we go back to the main group, okay? You're going to try to summarize that big idea when we share out to the whole group.
Well,
okay, we're
I mute myself again.
Okay, looks like almost everybody is back. Let's do this. We'll hear from one person from each of the 4 breakout groups. Really, we only have time to just capture one idea that came up in your small group discussion that was interesting, funny, smart, or thought-provoking. Who wants to go first?
Well, Tim just volunteered me, so I'll jump in. I love that video, and I would try to show that to middle school students, because as much as I have that voice in my head, I feel like 6th, 7th, and 8th graders always have that voice in their head. And sometimes when they think they're being bullied, it's really their perception of what people are saying and doing. And we're really having an issue with that. So hopefully it could lead to dissipating some of that sort of thing. And then we just talked and shared and sort of introduced ourselves and helped each other with some other things. So that was a good way to go.
So glad you made the connection. Thanks for sharing. Who wants to go next? We're just hearing a little bit about what you talked about inside your group. Some key ideas that came up. Insights or questions or ways you thought about it. Jamie.
Okay. So in my group, one of the takeaways we kind of left off on was we were talking about our online identities and what part of ourselves that we want to project in both this class and in other places that we're digital authors, and how we might want to craft that, and kind of just still talking about what that means to us to have an online identity. And we might even have various identities that we'd want to represent publicly.
Cool. Thanks for sharing.
And jump in if you have something else to add from my group.
I thought that was great. And let's hear from another group. What kinds of topics came up? What struck you? Something noteworthy or memorable?
Well, can I chime in from Jamie's group too?
Sure.
I liked, I liked actually the discussion we had around just kind of defining the intent of authorship. So really dialing in that, okay, so there's creativity, but we're dealing with that. You have creativity, we're channeling it for an audience, with intent, regardless of who the audience is or where we want it to be directed. We're dealing in the realm of we're creating something with the intent of showing or provoking or connecting or exchanging. So I guess dealing with the importance of that term authorship, and I guess really honing in on what that means in terms of creating within the digital realm or the internet, I guess.
Yeah, because you can be creative without sharing, right? But
yeah.
Authorship implies sharing in some ways with some audience. Yeah, I think this is a really key idea to unpack a little bit. If there's anybody else who wants to do some synthesis.
We also talked about that idea of being creative and discomfort with sharing, and we were talking about that voice that Nathan Zed presented, that voice in his head of you're not good enough, and how that might apply both to us as digital authors but also to our students, and how to be aware of that as teachers, what voices may be going on in the students' minds as we are asking them to create.
Huge and important. Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to have the last word on this dialogue before we press on?
I don't know if I want the last word, but one of the things I shared with the group is that, and I share this with my 5th graders, that ability plus effort equals achievement. So if you have, great ability, you don't need a lot of effort to achieve. If you have low ability, then you need to work at it if you're going to achieve. But there's risks involved, and if you're willing to do that, you will achieve. And there's a learning curve, sometimes a long learning curve, to really get to the top of your field. As I said, it'll be a decade at least in your field to really be there. And we don't need to be afraid of that. It's good we're on the road, and we're doing our best.
We're on the road and we're doing our best. That's exactly right. And I like the idea of the road metaphor just as much as I like the rolling a burrito metaphor. Okay, I just think that's an absolutely wonderful way to think about life, right? Is what's in your burrito, you just roll it up and the ingredients are as good as they are, right? So I'm really pleased at the thoughtfulness that you demonstrated in our small group discussion. Now, for time purposes, what I'm going to invite you to do is go take a look at 2 of your peers' blog posts as they make sense of the way in which David Buckingham and I are both using the word digital literacy, but we might be thinking about it in slightly different ways. Because what I want to do now is review the work that I'm hoping you're going to do for next week, because there's quite a lot of it and it's really cool. All right, so it's down here. Please complete this part of the work for next Wednesday. Our theme is called The Critical and the Creative. We're asking, what's the relationship between readers and writers in a digital age? So you're going to read chapters 4 and 5 and chapter 8, which is on podcasting in my book. And I hadn't showed these yet to you, but if you click here, you're going to go to the website for the book. And there you can access the PowerPoint slides and the other study materials. So we're really drilling down, focusing on chapter 4, chapter 5, and chapter 8 for this book. And in each of these sections, there's PowerPoint slides that summarize the chapter and some like vocabulary concepts. So so read and review the Create to Learn. And then I want you to read this really interesting article by Luciana Pangrazio. It's called Reconceptualizing Critical Digital Literacy. This is a scholarly article where she attempts to identify some of the tensions that are occurring in the way this word digital literacy is being used. You're already well aware of that, but she tries to like lay out some of the tensions that almost like, this is such a big concept that when people look at it, they privilege certain aspects. And that means they sometimes ignore or minimize certain other aspects. So she lays out her take on how vast the concept is and then where the tensions or conflicts are in the way this term is being used. Okay, so it's a pretty interesting article. She's a researcher from Australia who specializes in digital literacy. So now discuss. Luciana Pangrazio offers an analysis of some of the many tensions that exist in the term digital literacy. And Hobbs offers her thoughts about the concepts and ideas that enable people to comprehend and analyze messages as part of digital authorship. Use the Facebook discussion group, you know what that is, right? To comment on some of these ideas from the 2 readings that resonated with you. So you're really looking for what ideas from these readings like speak to you, connect to your job, your work, your life, right? And so use the Facebook discussion group for that. And as you contribute, take time to read and respond to some of the ideas shared by the class members. What we're trying to do in the Facebook discussion group this week is like pool our reading of this article on the insights that seem important to us. So we're going to share some insights that are important to us and then listen and respond to each other, just as we would do in a seminar room, right? We're going to try to recreate that seminar room in our Facebook group. But then we've got a really cool leap to work on. We're going to be studying a podcaster named Morgan Jaffe. She's created a podcast series called Burst Your Bubble. Let's just take a listen to the first 2 minutes of one of the episodes called Ay, 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 the racist Frito Bandito.
Before we start, I just want to apologize for my poor Spanish pronunciation. I really do not mean to offend anyone. It's bad, though. I hope it's not too distracting. And please enjoy the show. Little kids are incredibly impressionable. And when you're small, you're still learning so much. You're learning how to think critically and can't help when something catches your eye. Maybe that's why I get on the defensive when it comes to little kids, cartoons, and advertisements. Like that moment when you realize that kids' cereals have fun colors and a cartoon character and are placed lower on the grocery store shelves so that kids will tug on an adult's sleeve and say, "Can we buy this?" Or how some companies have online games for kids, but in reality the game is promoting a product. One example is McDonald's, which has a whole website for kids to play games as Happy. It's just one giant ad for a Happy Meal. Or how Camel cigarettes used to market their product with Joe Camel. That is, of course, until people realized that children could identify that Joe Camel was associated with cigarettes just as quickly as they could say Mickey Mouse was associated with Disney. Some are clearly a little more harmful than others. But I think it's important to remember that when we're young, that's when we learn about stereotypes. And sometimes we learn those stereotypes from ads. Maybe that's why today's episode is so disappointing. Because hey, did you know that Fritos had a racist Mexican character named the Frito Bandito sell their corn chips? I'm Morgan Jaffe, and this is Burst Your Bubble.
Okay, so that gives you a little taste of Morgan Jaffe's series called Burst Your Bubble. I'm inviting you to sign up to listen to one episode of her podcast. You see how I clicked on that link to the sign up sheet? I'm going to ask 2 students to sign up for each of these episodes. One is on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. One is on Dr. Seuss and Japanese Americans. One's on hairspray and segregation. One's on the California Diggers, about stereotypes of Native people in the California Gold Rush. What Shall I Be? It's the girls' career board game from the 1960s. It's Ugly Betty and affirmative action. It's Cheers and Queers. It's the Bechdel test about the representation of women in film, and it's Jews, radio, and the 1930s. So you're gonna choose one of those. You're gonna put your name here, so they'll always be like Dave and Angie. That's it. You guys have got the Dr. Seuss and Japanese Americans all sewn up, right? And here's what I want you to do, right? So you're gonna choose one of those podcasts. You can listen to the podcast anywhere on any podcast player. I use iTunes, but I also can access these podcasts for free on Stitcher. And so pretty much wherever you get your podcasts, you can access this podcast, and I've given you a link. You can see how easy it is to listen. But here's what I want you to do. Leap 1. The critical and the creative. In this assignment, you listen to a podcast by Morgan Jaffe and offer a critical analysis of it, using your interpretation of the work as informed by selected concepts from the readings. So Burst Your Bubble is a media literacy podcast series created by Morgan Jaffe. You'll listen to one episode, using it as a mentor text to examine the genre of the podcast and consider the nature of digital authorship in relation to the pedagogy and practice of media. So you're going to select one episode. These 2 readings should be helpful to you. Recognize that I describe what a mentor text is in chapter 4. And I even offer a model for how to analyze a mentor text in chapter 4. And then there's chapter 8, which is all about podcasting, right? So between these 2 sources, you should have lots of ideas to help you think through your essay. So what you're going to do is create a blog post that provides a summary and critical analysis of the Morgan Jaffe podcast that you listen to. You're going to create a critical analysis of it using your interpretation of the work as informed by concepts from the readings. In grading your blog Leap 1 entry, I'll look for these 3 criteria for evaluation. First, you've provided a high-quality summary of the podcast using careful description of its content and format, quoting from the work as appropriate. 2, you've analyzed the podcast by selecting and applying concepts from the readings that help you offer original insight on the work. And 3, your writing is engaging, well-organized, offering an authentic interpretation of the podcast and expressing a personal and professional stance using reasoning and evidence. I'm expecting that you include 3 hyperlinks and 1 image in your blog post, and that you include a works cited list in APA format. I'm expecting that length to be about 1,000 words. That's about 4 double-spaced pages, right? So not too long, about 4, could be a little bit longer, but 4 to 5 double-spaced pages is the expectation for the length. Let's see what questions you have before I let you go. Should be fun to analyze a podcast. What questions do you have? Tim, I can't hear you, buddy. I saw those air quotes, but I can't hear you. Damn, use the chat. Put the comments in the chat. Open up that little chat bar and talk to me that way. Who else has questions?
I do.
Yeah.
So it's actually semi off topic, but it's actually about podcasting. I had kind of like an aha moment and there's a project I want to do with kids. I'm not sure who has expertise in podcasting. What is the easiest or most user-friendly way of creating that? I've thought about using GarageBand, but just playing around seems like a lot to take in.
Okay, so maybe other people will have ideas about that. I just put the podcasting tool that I'm using right now into the chat, Nat. It's Anchor FM. It's super easy. I've made 3 postings already. My podcasts are pretty crappy right now, but the tool is super easy.
Does that allow you to record and then like copy and paste?
Yep.
Excellent. That's what I'm looking for.
It lets you connect like music tracks and sound effects and then voice. So it lets you combine music, sound effects, and voice in a very simple, easy way. It's really
awesome. Matt, I just started a podcasting with my 4th graders. I had them listen to one and they had to find answers to the questions in the podcast. I had to mark down the time they heard the answer. So let me know if you start to create with one. So that was going to be, I was moving into them once they get familiarized with one.
Yeah. This is going to actually be with some advisory kids. So the way my school does it is I have the same cohort of kids for 4 years. They're seniors now, and they're the same kids that my first year I started teaching. They were freshmen. So I'm kind of doing like a reflecting back, like advice they have for incoming freshmen. And I want to kind of work on that. So it's going to be a little bit longer of a project.
So what's wonderful to hear is you can see we're going to have an in-depth conversation about podcasting next week, aren't we? Because we will all have had the chance to listen to a podcast, analyze it, and think it through in terms of our own practice. So we're going to have a great time next week. I did want to call your attention to just one thing, and this is an optional thing. Recognize that you're going to create your leap for next Wednesday. So that is the big project for this week. And once it's done, I want you to tweet a link to your blog about the podcast, right? Obviously, that's how we're sharing our work. And then there's an optional opportunity next Monday. If you happen to be hanging around, we're going to do a webinar with the author, Morgan Jaffe. So we'll get to meet her. We'll get to find out why she created this series. This is an optional thing. You don't have to attend, but if you want to, it's going to be on Monday, February 5th at 4 o'clock, right? So we'll get a chance to go behind the scenes with her and find out how she has created this podcast series. Okay, so give me a thumbs up if you have a pretty clear picture of your workload for this week for this class. It's scary and exciting all at the same time. You're going to be reading, you're going to be writing, you're going to be listening, you're going to be having a blast, I think.
Is there a specific time that the assignments due on Wednesday?
In general, if it's in by 7 o'clock, that's cool. If it's in by midnight, I'll be happy, right?
Between 7 and midnight. Yep.
You know, between 7 and midnight, that's a golden time. I'd much rather you be here for the class rather than be working on your podcast and miss this, though. So just saying, right? All right, so let's do. Since we're in a listening mode for next week, we'll say goodbye with a goodbye that's kind of oral. Ready? Goodbye. So give me the goodbye. Goodbye. Give me the goodbye wave with your ear.
Yes,
Renee, one quick question for you.
Sure.
I have a question about one of the weeks coming up. Should I send you an email or?
How about if we'll end the class now, everybody who wants to leave and anybody who wants to hang around and hear Matthew and I talk about that question or other questions, just hang on. Just like we do after class, right? If you want to, hang around if you want to. All right, we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
All right, so Matthew, what's the question for you're asking?
During April vacation, I'm taking a group of kids to Spain.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty. I do one every year. Last year was a World War II tour. So I'm going to be unavailable certain days. I just kind of want to see like what we could work out, so that way I'm not missing anything.
Yeah, so I think probably what you'll do is you'll just send me an email saying, here are the dates that I'm going to be unavailable. I won't be able to do work. And here's my expected, I will be able to complete it by X date. So you make a proposal to me in an email.
Okay.
It'll just say, this date's going to be, any assignments you give me on this date's not going to work out, but I should be able to get it done by the date you propose.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I can be flexible that way. I think that seems, I'm trying to multitask here from over in Germany, and, it's 1 a.m. here. So I wouldn't recommend that if you're having to deal with teenagers.
It's always a handful.
Exactly. But how fun and how lucky you are to get to do that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Cool.
All right, thank you. See you later.
Cool. Sure. What other questions you guys have?
I have a question.
Sure.
Might be a very dumb question, but you said this should have some hyperlinks.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that your chapters are going to give me some idea of what I'm hyperlinking to.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I have no idea what I would hyperlink to.
Aha. So one of the places where I deal with that's a great question. And the chapter 7, blogs and website, it describes the 2 forms of hyperlinks, external hyperlinks and internal hyperlinks.
Okay.
So hyperlinks can be distracting.
Right.
But they also can inspire curiosity for the reader. So your choice of hyperlinks is kind of a creative decision on your part, where you want to encourage the reader, you want to direct the reader where to learn more, generally, or here's another opinion, right? So as you do the work, you'll be thinking about how might you want to deepen the reader's understanding of these ideas, right? So one really easy one, of course, is linking to the podcast. Right? That one's, that makes sense. Maybe you want to go behind the scenes and compare this podcast to another podcast that you've listened to. That might be another link. You might even refer to something else entirely.
So if you find an article like that went along with it that had another opinion about it, you could somehow talk about it and then put a hyperlink to it within your
Exactly. Because it looks like a lot of what Morgan Jaffe is interested in is issues of stereotypes. You see how she's like, one is about Jews, the other one's about Native Americans. So you may find just in your own, stuff that crosses your path in the New York Times or in an article or something about stereotypes that sort of like allows you to share that information you learned from the other source.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's kind of part of the creativity is figuring that part out, which is why it's a cool challenge.
Yeah.
Glad you asked that question. What other questions do you have?
I think
that was actually mine, but I was too afraid to ask.
Oh, good.
I'm glad you asked, Barbara.
Got 30 years on most of you. Maybe not you. No, I don't think I do have 30 years on you.
No, we're the same age, girl.
Oh dear. Oh well.
Yeah, I'm cool. I'm glad you're asking that, because this project there's a bunch of challenges, right? There's just, if you're not familiar with a podcast, it's like wrapping your head around what is a podcast, right? Then there's the whole content of it, which is going to be new for all of us. Like Frito Bandito, I mean, I haven't heard that in 30 years, right? So the content itself is going to be a kind of a challenge to write about it. Then when you put it on your blog,
you have to choose one image and 3 hyperlinks. So that there's like an artistic dimension to that. Which image do you choose? Right? Where do you place it on the page? Yeah.
Screenshot of the
You could.
Of the podcast.
You could do it. That would be one way. That would be one way to do it. And there's and then there's a million other ways, and sometimes you won't even know what that is until you're writing and you put it up on the page, and then the idea just comes to you. Right? So we'll see.
Very good.
So I think it'll be fun. We'll see. I feel like I have a lot of respect for podcasters. I think it's really hard genre to work in. And I think when we have a conversation about podcasting, we're all going to learn a lot, because between the 18 of us, we'll have heard 10 different podcasts by one podcaster. Yeah. So we should be able to say something interesting by next week, I think. So, all right, cool. Other questions, other issues? All right. Good night, you guys. Have fun. I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.